Hello and welcome back. Before we get to part 2, Real Talk, please allow us to fulfill our capitalistic duty and plug our Patreon, the Contrarian Supplements.
That's right. For a small fee, you too can help the Contrarians rage on.
We have tiers ranging from just $1 to $10. It all depends on how much content you can handle.
Starting at $1, it's the Travoltis tier, which gets you access to new bonus episodes focusing on a new movie every month, as well as access to the patron chat. Join other patrons in making fun of our opinions.
Moving up to $3 is the Winonis tier, which unlocks access to our pre-recording notes, our video reviews, and our spin-off show, Contrarians After Hours.
That's a more laid-back space where we talk about other things we've been watching, reading, playing, thinking about. Sometimes it's related to the movies being covered in the main feed, but it usually isn't.
If you want to be part of those patrons who help us shape the show by telling us which movies to tackle, that's when you sign up for the $5 tier, the Embries, and the $10, the Gads.
Finally, all supplement subscribers, regardless of the tier, get access to our archive of special patron projects. Head over to patreon.com/contrarianprime now to join.
Be sure to listen through the end of the episode to find out what's coming up to the Contrarian Supplements this month. Now, it's time for some Real Talk.
Who's Aguilar?
Your ancestor. His family were assassins. They were burned at the stake by the Templars, Torquemada, and the Black Knight Yuso Ojeda. Aguilar took up the assassin's cause.
Get out much?
More than you.
And the others in here, are they lab rats too?
They're assassins. Murderers like their ancestors. Like you, Cal. All born with a predisposition to violence.
Murderer.
You killed a man.
Pimp.
Would you kill again?
All right, we are back with Assassin's Creed. Julio, on our break there, I was trying to kind of formulate in my head what would have been in the theaters at the time this was released to kind of compete with it, why it kind of disappointed financially. So on the 21st of December, it was released alongside Sing, the kids movie, Patriots Day, which is something with Mark Wahlberg, and another movie we've covered in the past, Passengers. So it had, I guess, a little bit of competition surrounding that, but unfortunately, I think what killed it was, looks like 2 weeks before that, a extremely boring movie called La La Land was released, but a lot of people liked that. And then 6 days before, excuse me, just 5 days before, was Rogue One, which of course went on to be a bit of a sleeper hit that made over $1 billion. So poor timing for Michael Fassbender and the gang with Assassin's Creed here. I will say, based on the discussion in the first half, I'm glad we have our guests here, because this movie, I'm like Elaine. I don't have an opinion on what it's like. Well, you should care about this. Well, I don't. So I was really worried the second half of this was going to be a bit slim pickings, but it sounds like we're in for a decent discussion here. Before we get to that, I do want to throw it back to our guests. They already explained who they are, what they do in the first half. We want to go ahead and give you guys the floor here before we get into Real Talk to let us know where we can find y'all. Any and all accounts, any and all websites, whatever you guys want to plug right here. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so I'm Techtic. I'm joined with Nerdbomber. We're from the Online Warriors podcast. You can find us wherever you get your podcast medium. That includes Apple,
Spotify. There's so many different podcast listening services, basically everywhere. You can, or I guess, read us, not listen to us. Have weird opinions on Twitter. I refuse to call it X.
Good.
At OW Nerdbomber. X just sounds weird. I feel like I'm making an adult movie or something.
I'm not going to give Elon Musk the credit for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you call it X, he wins. So
exactly.
No, I refuse.
But the main show account is at Online Warriors 1, and Techtic is OW Techtic. He remembers his own name sometimes. But yeah, we also have our website, www.onlinewarriorspodcast.com. We're pretty much everywhere you get podcast goodness in your ear holes.
That's a great pitch.
But yeah, it's always awesome to have guests on and expand our, I guess you'd say, portfolio of.
Nice.
I always get excited meeting new members of. I sound like such an asshole saying podcasting community, but it's true. It's
Podcast pals is the phrase.
Okay, I like that. Well, our podcast pals of the evening are here to talk about this financially and critically disastrous Michael Fassbender movie. And it's funny that you say a movie that made $240 million is a disaster financially, but it did end up still losing the studio somewhere between $75 and $100 million, which wouldn't it be so awesome to be in a position where you could just do that and it didn't ruin you? Like if I lose like $1,000, I'm like, well, this is not good. I'm going to have a tough time coming up.
Shoot, sometimes if I buy like a bad sub from Subway, I'm like, man, I really could have used that $6.
I'm done for the week.
18% and a nasty green splotch in Rotten Tomatoes, and that is from a pool of 228 reviews. An audience score of 42%. Looks like that's based on over 50,000 entries. So the sad green popcorn bucket tilted to the side. This movie does have its supporters, though. I found that in my research of it, that there's people that think it got dealt a bad hand. Julio, which reviews did you pull for us to reinforce this?
All right, so the movie's rotten, which means that here in Real Talk, we're going to sample some fresh tomatoes. People that liked it, critics that liked it. I'm going to start with Simone de Roquefort. Man, that's quite a name. From Polygon, who says, against all odds, with a quirky franchise and a team of star talent, Assassin's Creed succeeds at being an enjoyable action film. And I walked out of my theater genuinely, truly excited about where the story could go. Team of star talent, I think that part is, you can't argue against that. That is true.
Well, I almost agree with them until the very end. They basically wrapped it up where it can't really go anywhere. The apple was left with Christopher Columbus, who's not an assassin. And then you have a vigilante squad in the future who, I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. Vigilantism is illegal. So they went out to be superheroes one night and then all got arrested. Now they're back in prison.
Well, I kind of got the feeling that him murdering Jeremy Irons was not on the up and up with the law.
Yeah, that's true. That was their first law that they broke. I forgot about that. Yeah, but nobody liked that guy. No one's going to look. They're going to go, oh, yeah, I don't know what happened. He fell on this knife.
Would you describe the Assassin's Creed franchise as quirky?
No.
No.
It seems like an odd word to use on this quote. All right, this one, Alex, I had to pull because, of course, this is Armand White from the National Review.
Of course.
If you're not familiar with Armand White, basically whatever the majority is saying, Armand White is going to argue.
Armand White is like, if the Contrarians podcast was a physical place, he'd be the statue in the middle of it.
Yes. He says, director Justin Kurzel adapts the eponymous violent video game and gets right to the point of religious and moral conflict in this postmodern, medieval, gothic sci-fi flick.
Postmodern.
I guess it is sci-fi. The Animus is, I guess, sci-fi, more sci-fi than fantasy. I saw some, they're not on the quotes that I picked, but I saw some people arguing about how awesome it is that the movie deals in shades of gray. There's no blood, it's not that this is good and this is bad, and that the Templars have their own mindset and they think that what they're doing is right, and then the assassins, they are not necessarily
but they're not doing what's right.
I agree.
The daughter thinks that the daughter thinks that she's doing something noble, but she's really been bamboozled by her dad.
Yep.
Which, like, there's a whole host of daddy issues there, but
she's Vera Farmiga in source code.
Yes, she's been manipulated. But that's, yeah, exactly. I think that the movie paints the Templars very much as the villains. I don't see the shades of gray. Whenever there could have been a shade of gray, it turns out that they were lying. They were never interested in eradicating violence. All they wanted was to eradicate the assassins. So I don't follow that idea. And well, it came to mind because Armand White is talking about like religious and moral conflict and so on. I don't know that I see any like I see religious overtones, but I know that there's a whole lot of conflict, real conflict here. I mean,
And the only mention of religion was when they mentioned that it was used as a means to control.
yes,
And that was like in passing.
yeah. Armin White, as usual, grasping at straws in
Yes.
his reviews.
On brand.
Violet Lavoie from Old Movie says, "This is how a geek movie should be done."
I
Is
agree.
it? Really?
Yeah, it was good. I think geek's a compliment.
Oh, I think geek's a compliment, but I don't know that this is how it should be done. We shall discuss. I do agree with one thing, or I think that the one thing that this movie does that is right, and actually we're going to read a quote that supports this or that shares my belief, is that it takes it seriously. Like they saw the video game and they said, we can make a movie out of this, not just a movie that's kind of embarrassed of its source material, but instead we're going to take the source material and try to take it seriously and see where we get there. Now, did they succeed? That's I think what we can discuss.
You started this, Sophie. You don't get to walk away. We both know what happens next.
Clarice Luffrey from The Independent UK says Assassin's Creed has probably done the very best it can with the hand it's been dealt with. And really, this might be the best video game adaptation yet. Mind you, that's not saying a huge amount. So 2016, was this the best video game adaptation yet? You know, we were talking about Sonic and Super Mario and even Rampage. Those were like much later. Alex, we both love Street Fighter, but...
That's a different kind of... I think Silent Hill is a better movie than this. But aside
a best
from
adaptation, though?
The best adaptation of a video game? Well, there was Doom. There's a part in Doom that goes into first person.
Oh,
Doom was not
the first
good.
person's shush. The first person scene in Doom.
One scene does not make it a movie.
That's all it needed.
Oh man, it's so bad.
If it was literally, if they had just showed me the first person scene on loop for a little bit, it might have been better than the Doom movie.
Max Payne is such a perplexing movie because there's moments of like genuinely good acting in there, but that movie's just a fucking disaster. Like Chris O'Donnell has like this really good scene of like cowardice in it. But I don't know if any of y'all have seen that. There's much better things to do with your time in life. But I screened that movie and I remember thinking like, I guess someone was familiar with the idea of this game, but anything that really works in it is not an adaptation of the game. Also, Nelly Furtado's in it.
The singer?
So
Weird.
Yeah, she's got a role in it. It's Wahlberg and Mila Kunis are the two top draws in it. But I mean, still to this day, even after Assassin's Creed, dude, The Last of Us changed things. Now
But that's a move. This is a discussion of movies, not series, movies.
No. That's what I mean. Like that. I think what that made people specific, like what everyone on this cast right now would know, is that there is an inherent difficulty in translating a video game into a 2-hour experience that for literal decades prior to this, movie studios just like, fuck it, no one cares. Like, you know, think of Super Mario Brothers with Bob Haskins and John Leguizamo. Like, it's just...
Well, that's a really bad. So I want to get into this a little bit.
Was that your last quote, Julio?
Well, yes, as far as critics, I have something from our friends from the Franchise Killer podcast, but I can deploy it in a little bit. I'm curious to hear where Techtic is going.
Alex is mentioning such good points, especially with the Super Mario. Like that is when you take a video game and you adapt it into a movie, you have to take creative liberty. Everything does not translate one-to-one well, so you have to take certain creative liberties. And both the Super Mario Brothers movie, and like I want to be clear, we're talking the live action old one, and this movie took those creative liberties. The Super Mario Brothers movie did it terribly. They added comedy in places that it didn't need to be. Certain characters were like weird monsters, and like it just made no sense. And it was like basically overalls were the only link that it was Mario Brothers.
The mustache.
This movie, the mustache. Sorry, I stand corrected. This movie, as I mentioned previously, the source material, you're just a bartender. it said, no, that's lame. We're going to make him an ex-convict so that she shows that in his gene pool, he has a craving for blood. That's awesome. That's awesome. That he is a killer.
Is it?
That's cool.
Is it?
Okay. The next creative liberty, the Animus. Okay. It was a chair. Lame. They made it this live action sequence so that not only when they're in the past is cool stuff happening, but also in the present, cool stuff is happening. That was an awesome decision. And those kind of things helped both the past and present play really, really nicely together and made this a satisfying video game movie. The only thing, my biggest critique and where this fell short was there should have been a lot more expanding on like both the past as well as the present before you went to this big climax at the end. This should have been 2 movies, and I think that's where it truly dies.
Nerdbomber sounds like she doesn't fully agree, but I agree with a couple things. Here's the big difference is that obviously not having played the game, I can't tell when I'm watching the movie what is faithful to the game, what improved on the game and what didn't. So I can just experience it as a movie. So whenever I critique it, I'm missing out on all the goodwill that it earns for translating the video game properly. And I guess that's going to happen with most video game adaptations at this point, because as we said earlier, I don't play that much anymore. So, if I see a Mortal Kombat movie, I'm familiar with that world, and I can, on top of experiencing it as a movie, I can experience it as an adaptation. Same thing with Super Mario, even Sonic. But Assassin's Creed, unfortunately, I have to experience it just as a movie. So I agree with you that when I hear it put out there, I'll take the really weird crane thing that lifts him over him just sitting in a chair. But when I'm watching it without the context of like what it was like in the game, it just looked weird. It's like, why does it need to be that he gets lifted in the air when also later, once he connects to his past, he's going to be swinging around? I don't know. It just felt like a helmet would have done a better job of like, you just put the helmet on him and then set him free in the room. So there's like little things like that if you don't have the game to compare it to, you're probably missing out on, they actually made a good decision here, or it improved it.
I just don't think he's right. I think I agree with you. So I'll pitch you a different movie based on the game. All right. You're a bartender or any occupation, and someone comes up to you and they're like, hey, we want you to help us with an experiment. You're down on your luck. Like, you're just a bartender. So, and I'm not saying you're just a bartender, but like in terms of making money, you're not making like bank as a bartender. You can, but most of the time you're not.
Are you pitching that they approach him like, hey, do you want to do one of those lab rat things?
Yeah. And so you get involved with this and you sit in, your chair and you're transported back in time. And more of the movie happens back in time in this really cool Spanish setting. And then you find out that they're actually trying to get you to help them track down this apple or the shards of the apple. And you're like, whoa. I don't want to give up free will. So you steal their tech. And then you kind of do like a National Treasure-esque movie. I know I've brought that up a second time now, but you can actually like go back in the past and relive different ancestors throughout history's experiences to then do a modern day treasure hunt. That, to me, is what the Assassin's Creed movie should have been. What we got, it was not what I wanted.
So you're saying get rid of the superhero element that was added, which I can get behind that.
You can still do all of the really cool like leap of faith stuff. You're just doing it in the past.
Yeah. All right, I can get behind that. I do tend to agree that given them weird memory power ability things, that was bad.
The hallucinations are what we call the bleeding effect. Images of your regression layer themselves over your present-day field of vision.
But, okay, out of those two versions, I mean, which one is more likely to satisfy people that are looking for a movie adaptation of Assassin's Creed versus people that are just going to see a movie? Because I think that's the trick, right? You can make a movie that's a really good movie, but doesn't feel like it's honoring the game. Like if they make an Assassin's Creed movie that's just Assassin's Creed because the guy's wearing a hood and because he travels back in time or his consciousness travels back in time, then that might be something that you shrug off as like, that doesn't really feel like Assassin's Creed, versus something that sticks more. Again, not having played the game, like I don't know how Nerdbomber's pitch feels versus the game. Is
more in line than what we got with the giant mega robot arm thing.
Okay. Before we fully delve into it, I have one more quote, and it's not from a critic. So I posted a picture of the rent screen before I rented this on YouTube, and our friends from the Franchise Killer podcast reached out, and I think it's Reese that runs that Twitter account, and not so shamefully confessed that he actually likes the movie. We kind of went back and forth, and he basically said, look, it's not a good movie. It has some bad shit ideas. The action is cut to shreds and the script is a mess. But it's the first time in my mind that a director treated a video game as a legitimate piece of art versus dumb C-movie fodder. And I appreciate that. So, is Assassin's Creed treating Assassin's Creed, the adaptation, as a piece of art? That's
the immediate problem with that is it's a movie starring Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard, along with Jeremy Irons and Brendan Gleeson, like these widely celebrated serious actors. Like, so it's hard to immediately say this movie's taking it seriously and not the performers involved, because this still is just, it exists to build up to like the moments like the leap of faith and to do the cool Matrix shit with the new the anus, what's it called? Animus? Animus. Okay. And I'm not criticizing their opinion. It's just my immediate thought is any movie with Michael Fassbender is taking its subject matter serious because Michael Fassbender takes his subject matter serious. You know what I mean?
Right, but whether it's Fassbender or well, he was producing, or
he's no Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Right. But I guess I don't think the movie is good, but it did come through. Before I even read this from Riz, it did come through that it was respecting its source material, whether, it was a successful adaptation or not. And I don't think that the people that made, Street Fighter or the original Mortal Kombat movies, I don't think that they necessarily cared much for the source material. They just saw it as IP that they could mine to get gamers to go see the movie, and that's, you can trace that as a reason for how the movies turn out or not. But when I see an adaptation that treats the source material as a joke versus an adaptation that is trying to do something to, it gives it a little bit of respect on my end, and that's a positive. But that only takes you so far. So, the movie still has to be good. And then we kind of run into problems here. The other thing that Riz mentions, and I think that might be my biggest problem with the movie, is the way that it's shot, like the way that it shoots the action. And Alex, you can equipped in something that probably won't make it to the final edit, but you said that you couldn't tell what was happening in some of the action scenes, and I had the same problem. I watched this really late last night, so I was really tired, so that might have been part of it. But there was a point where...
It definitely wasn't, I can promise you.
Okay, there was a point where I was like, this thing is going to give me a headache. It was, it kept cutting every half a second. And I was like, just let him jump in one shot. Stop cutting to show me this angle and then this angle and this angle.
The 3D trend was dead by this point, right?
I don't know. Was this a 3D release?
That
would have been even worse.
I feel like this would have made me nauseous in 3D.
Yeah, it's because when you have those quick cuts, it's even worse on if you have the 3D glasses.
So based on a very quick Google search here, it looks like it was originally intended to be 3D, but wasn't.
Probably because they screened it in 3D and everybody threw up.
Yeah, I didn't like the action, and there's big chunks of the movie. Basically, anytime he jumps to the past, it's like, oh no, brace yourselves because here comes another action sequence. So that made it really, that was the unpleasant part of watching Assassin's Creed. Honestly, I might be in the minority. I found the stuff in present day, I was more captivated by that. Seeing this ex-con that was on death row with a torture past, having to decide if he's going to help this shady organization. And there's this awesome moment when he's, I think the first time he goes to the mess hall and they give him the food, they give him the apple. I don't know, but there's a lot of people interacting with him. And then the scene is about to end and Fassbender goes, "What the fuck is going on?" I was like, that's awesome. That's somebody that knew that this movie is it can be a little too much to follow. But the sentiment in those scenes, I think that the movie acknowledges that there's a lot of information going on, and a lot of it can be ludicrous if you're not, vibing with the movie. So it actually made me maybe enjoy it more. I was all in for the explanations and the machinations of the Templars and all this stuff. My pitch for the Assassin's Creed that never was and probably never will be is that you stay more on the present. Like, I know that the fun of the game is like jumping back, but when you jump back, you make it really special. So like, the interesting story is what's happening here in the present. I don't really care about the prince that's getting kidnapped and the chase scenes to protect the apple. Like, that stuff is just like, there was nothing. I couldn't connect with a single assassin, even like
Fassbender. Because you knew he got away with it.
But even then, like, I mean, you don't know. Like, I don't know what the fate is of this guy. I know that he knows where the apple is, but I don't know if he knows because he saw somebody take it away and hide it before he died or what. But my problem is that he doesn't have a personality. Like, nobody in the past has a personality. I know that he's stoic and he's brave, but other than that, I mean, nobody here has any sort of like moral quandaries in the past the way that they have moral quandaries in the present. And that's why I think I found it more interesting, whenever we're in present day with Jeremy Irons manipulating things and his cabal of powerful people trying to decide the fate of the world. Like, that is, I think that story is more interesting. So actually, because I imagine you can't have an Assassin's Creed movie that doesn't really spend at least half its runtime in the jumps to the past, then what you need to do is really make that story in the past interesting instead of just action sequences that are fairly generic and on top of that, not even well shot.
To jump in here real quick, this bad boy was released in 3D, and more concerning, this was released in 3D IMAX, and that just gives me motion sickness thinking about it.
How do you guys feel about 3D in general?
There are some movies that I've seen in 3D which can be really fun, but sometimes, and maybe it's just like I'm getting old and my brain can't do it, but I never used to get motion sickness. And we saw, was it Gravity, the Sandra Bullock movie in
classic.
space in 3D. And maybe it was just too because they were in space and it was kind of disorienting, as it should be if you're floating in space. But I spent most of that movie like fighting back nausea because it was not a good time.
It's taxing on the senses, that movie. So I get that.
The only good 3D movie I've ever seen was Spy Kids 3D.
Jackass 3D was fantastic.
Oh man, I didn't know that had a 3D option.
It did. It's actually, they shot it in 3D, so it's proper 3D. Was this thing shot in 3D, Alex? There's no way.
No, you'd be able to tell just from watching how we watched it.
What is this?
I'm sorry, Carl. This is not the way I like to do things.
And don't do it.
Jeez, they pulled out all the stops trying to make money on this bad boy. And again, it's tough calling something that made $240 million a failure. I have no knowledge of the games. As I recalled, I remember in college, I had a buddy who played when I was watching it. And was like, this looks cool. I'm familiar with the engine. Like, I know how it works, and I know kind of what you do in the game and whatnot. I was very interested in this. I'm always interested in high profile disappointments. This certainly is not a disaster. This isn't like Cutthroat Island or some shit. But I mean, I remember back when this was announced, I was like, Michael Fassbender is going to be in an Assassin's Creed movie. And then Marion Cotillard, Jeremy Irons, all the people we've named so far. I was very fascinated by this. And watching this movie, there's something to read between the lines of, like, I don't know if it's Justin Kurzel, the director, Fassbender himself. I know they worked with like Ubisoft. Like, this wasn't just a thing. They got the rights to the video game and they're like, all right, fuck you. They got the rights and worked with the team there. Amar Azazia, sir, I apologize for mispronouncing, head of Assassin's Creed content at Ubisoft, stated the film, which is a, quote, brand new story with characters set in our universe, had the possibility to feature some familiar faces. And the present day element would feature Abstergo. Fassbender said, we really wanted to respect the games and the elements to it, but we also wanted to come up with our own thing. One thing I've sort of learned from doing the franchises like X-Men is that the audience, I think, wants to be surprised and see new elements of what they already know and different takes on it. I don't think he knows the comic book audience that well. And so I think there was like a good intent here and not just hey, this is hot for video game fans. Let's do this and make a movie. And I think there was the thought from the studio here, 20th Century Fox, that this had promised to do something. They gave it a Christmas release, for crying out loud. I just found this painfully boring. I can't tell you where I think it went off the rails or where like it failed. I think it looks like shit, but there's plenty of movies that I like that look like shit. So that's not just like a complete condemnation of the film. It's just this never even got going for me. I just found it boring, and it could have something to do with the fact that, we've talked about so far the improvements from the story of the game that make it more interesting. I just had nothing to go off of, and yeah, I never got out of first gear with this, which is a shame because I like everyone involved, and like I said, I think the intent is here. I don't think it's as bad as this legacy we've talked about would lead you to believe it is. I just couldn't get into it. That's basically the gist of it.
Well, I think the elevator pitch, whether it's for the game or for the movie, is really solid. Secret organization that has the technology to send you back in time, following your bloodline, and well, adventures happen when you have that starting point. I mean, that's good. It's just that where do you go from there? I mean, that also has to be good. But as a pitch, like as a concept, obviously it's too soon. 2016, it's not even 10 years away. So
it feels like it was 25 years ago.
I know, but like when I hear, right, like the first Super Mario Brothers movie failed, the reaction before the newer one came out, it was like, well, of course, because it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around how you adapt that into a movie that works. Certainly live action, at least. And but with Assassin's Creed, I was like, no, that's a really good idea for a movie. So you should be able to do something better than what they ended up doing. And you have a producer / star that is really passionate about it. So it's just a shame that I don't know if maybe, it's like 3 guys listed here. And maybe it's just that on the writing part, there's just, a problem with cracking the story properly, or too ambitious, like it's what Techtic was saying. There's too much story here, and maybe instead of setting up so many things that you wouldn't be able to resolve until you get to a second movie, you start smaller so that you can have a very satisfying first movie that then can launch you into other things that you can do with the property. But it's not, this is not one of those movies that I see. I'm like, why does this exist? They shouldn't have tried. This is something that I see as a missed opportunity, especially with all the talent that they have. And like I said, the present day things kept my attention. How about you guys? Like, as far as, can you tell when the movie lost you, if it lost you?
I think for me, a lot of it, aside from the fact that it deviated so far from what the game storyline was, I think a lot of it was just things felt overly complicated and more convoluted than they needed to be. Like, I think him basically taking on or like fusing with the persona of his past self almost made it feel a little bit more confusing. And like all of the other assassins in this prison basically becoming versions of their past selves. Like, it would have been fine, I think, and kind of taken one element of confusion or explanation out of the picture if they just were descendants and got to experience, what their ancestors were going through. And that was enough to compel them to protect the apple. Like, there was just a lot of different moving parts. And considering it was, an under 2-hour movie, I think there was just a lot of different things to wrap your head around and to figure out what was going on. And I think it just made it a little bit too convoluted.
They could have even cut out that first scene where he saw his mom get killed, because that's all explained verbally in discussions. Why even bother showing that?
I think there's just a lot of tonal shifts too. I mean, we talked about how we basically go from his initiation and all of the exposition that starts the movie to a modern day rock song. And there's just like some tonal whiplash in that, which is a little just jarring for the average viewer. And I'm just thinking, like, as I was watching this, I tried to take my like video game hat off. And when I think of like these big blockbuster movies, they do have to be somewhat approachable for any audience. And I was like, if I sat my parents down in front of this movie, they would be so confused. Like their head would be swimming. They'd be like, what is happening? Talking to each other, trying to figure out what was going on, then missing all the subtitles because they're talking to each other, trying to figure out what was going on. And I think they could have just, if they left the story as is, forget the video game adaptation point, but leave the story as is and just simplify it a little bit, I think it would have worked better.
Now, tomorrow, they announced that they're doing Assassin's Creed as an HBO show. They're giving it the Last of Us treatment, or what's the one on Prime now?
Fallout.
Fallout, right? The prestige streaming treatment.
That's what it takes, man. We were just talking about this earlier, and the idea of the movie versus you can do, because the Super Mario, that one with Chris Pratt they just made, that's not about a game. It's just using all the elements from it's not following the story of a game. I'm sorry. It's just taking all the elements from it. And it's like, here, let's make a fun movie. And it's fine and made $1 trillion or whatever. But like there are these games out there that have very interesting stories, like Assassin's Creed, like Fallout, like Last of Us, obviously, that if you give like a serious treatment to, you can lift, like the Last of Us series lifts all of the big moments from the game. The biggest creative liberty with that, to my recollection, is the episode with Ron Swanson. That's just like an elaboration of a side story in the game. And that was regarded as the best episode in the series. So, it just takes time. And this, like, I guess I'm jumping to your point already. Yeah. HBO was like, hey, we're going to try this again, but it's going to be a 10-part series with Michael Fassbender. And because games aren't like Mario anymore, man. Like the Metal Gear Solid games take like 20 hours to beat.
That's right. I forgot. We're here to combat aggression. I don't think I like your methods.
Okay, but that's the easy one. Like I knew that, we'd all go like, yeah, sure. Now, they announced that 2025, 2026, they're going to release another Assassin's Creed movie. They're starting again. Do you go see it in theaters?
Is this a sequel or is this like a Tomb Raider thing where they're rebooting it?
Yeah, no, they're restarting. They're starting from scratch.
If it's a reboot, yeah, I'm seeing it.
I mean, honestly, even if it was a sequel, I'd probably still see it.
I just don't see where they're going to go.
If it's a sequel, I don't think I'm paying like movie theater money for it. I think I would wait for it to hit streaming, but I would watch both.
Yeah, I wouldn't go see it in theaters. I mean, you would have to do something that really hook me to go out to theaters. I either get a director that I really like, or
Glenn Powell as Cal.
Glenn Powell as the new assassin. Whereas, yeah, you announce it as a streaming series, and well, for one, obviously it's a lot easier to watch, but also I think we're at a point where it's so much easier to put your trust on that with this kind of project. Like this movie didn't do anything to convince me that there's that people can crack it easier, to where I would just see an Assassin's Creed movie announced. I'll be like, oh, okay, they'll get it right this time. I'll be like, I don't know. There's a pretty good chance they're going to botch it again, because it's just such apparently such a complex concept to tackle in like 2 hours. It would depend a lot on who they cast and who they put behind. Whereas a streaming series, I would just give it a shot, even if it was all no names and I didn't know any of the people behind the camera. And I think that probably says a lot more about just where we are as far as distribution and how we consume media than the property itself. But it is telling that, because there are other games where I would just go see the movie no matter what. If you announce a Witcher movie, even, they just had a streaming series that I think is about to wrap, right? The next season of The Witcher is supposed to be the last one.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't even watched the last season. I stopped with 2 and I haven't picked it up yet. But if they announce a Witcher movie, I would go see it. I would go opening weekend. So I think it just depends. And again, I guess you could argue that I like the Witcher. I actually have a connection because I play the games. So.
Well, there are some games like Uncharted, for example, when they said we're going to make a movie out of this, I was like, awesome, that's a perfect movie. But one of my favorite video game series, and this is like older, I don't know if any of you guys have played, I know Techtic has played the first one at least, but like Mass Effect is probably hands down my favorite story in video games ever. And
Mhm.
if they tried to make that into a movie, I think I would cry. Like, I know they've talked about adaptations like throughout the years, but if that ends up as a movie and not a TV show, it is going to bomb because there's just so much content there. You can't do it justice in a movie. It's going to be bad.
That's for 20 years. Oh, Metal Gear Solid movie. And that's I'm in the boat for that. If they said it's going to be a 2-hour movie, I'm like, we're fucked. It's over.
I don't even know who would be Solid Snake.
I mean, back in the day, back in college, we used to fantasy book it as either Christian Bale or Hugh Jackman. Now, I think Oscar Isaac would be awesome as Snake.
Glenn Powell.
Oh yeah, he's the new one. Yeah, just put Tom Cruise in there.
Glenn Powell for
I hate
everything.
all of those options.
Really? I thought Oscar Isaac was actually really good.
Do you have an option?
Do you just want it to be you?
Now my joke's not going to be funny.
Michael Fassbender.
I honestly don't hate that one on it.
Redemption.
Shirt on or shirt off? And like, what is the moment in?
Well,
like,
isn't the new one coming out called Naked Snake?
there you go.
Well, you have Naked Snake in part 3, but yeah, there's in the first game, which I would want a movie or miniseries, whichever to be based on, where he gets tortured and they take his shirt off. So that would be where Fassbender gets to flex his muscles.
Where do I sign?
I know we're printing money here, Hollywood. Get on it.
I mean, you can bounce back and do, because, you could say after Assassin's Creed, he's done with video game movies. You just don't do it again. But, Ben Affleck, he failed with Daredevil and then he came back with Batman. And I mean, I wouldn't say that he necessarily succeeded a whole lot, but he did better than with Daredevil. So there's a chance that Fassbender hasn't written off video games completely and he might come back. I don't even know if he's produced anything since Assassin's Creed. Because if he has, then good for him. He didn't let the whole thing beat him down. But if he hasn't, I wouldn't blame him because he might have decided, you know what, that was a lot of work and it was kind of for nothing because even though it made money, it didn't make enough money.
Be an interesting one. We always joke about like, oh, if we ever run into him, we'll ask him about it. And that's, I assume at this point in his life, all the questions he gets on the street about movies and whatnot, this doesn't really come up that often. So it would be interesting to see if you could find a retrospective interview of him speaking about it, because the year before this, that's when he got nominated for Best Actor for Steve Jobs. So like, yeah, all the parts were there for this to be a success and it just didn't happen for whatever reason. The good news is within the next few years, he would make substantially worse movies in Alien Covenant and X-Men Dark Phoenix. So
Are you telling me that those movies are worse than Assassin's Creed?
X-Men Dark Phoenix is like one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It's way worse than Assassin's Creed. I hate that movie. I loathe it. It emits a foul and offensive odor.
What's the critic score?
For Dark Phoenix is
It's probably higher than Assassin's Creed.
22%. Not by much, but yeah, it's higher than Assassin's Creed.
Because the critics don't know what they're talking about.
There you go.
Okay, you have some experience with Fassbender. I know you said you were not very familiar with Marion Cotillard, but is this the worst Fassbender movie you've seen?
This is up there. Yeah.
I know he has like a lot of like bad stuff in the past few years. Like The Counselor got trashed pretty badly.
That's not just a Fassbender movie, though. That's one of those really weird ensemble casts.
The Snowman. That's like, I know that there's worse stuff I've seen with Fassbender. It's this sort of thriller, and I don't know if it's still Netflix. It was on Netflix for a while, so I finally broke down and watched it, and that is bad. Like that movie doesn't feel like it's trying anything the way that at least Assassin's Creed is trying for something. And I think, Alex, I understand that X-Men Phoenix, because you're so close to the property, like that hurts more than him failing at a movie that is for a property that you don't have that much attachment to.
I was looking over. He was in Jonah Hex, so that's definitely in discussion for bad movies he's been in. What a strange filmography this guy has.
Jonah Hex probably is way worse. I forgot that he was even in that. I like blocked that out of my memory.
Los asesinos han muerto para esto. Protégelo con tu vida.
Well, that's kind of where we're at with this Assassin's Creed movie. Clearly intended to launch a series, and fucking La La Land killed another dream. No, in truth, it was Rogue One. And as we've learned, it's always a gutsy maneuver, but going up against Star Wars movies is, well, no, that's not even true, because that wasn't even one of the chronological releases. That was like the offshoot. That movie was a surprise hit, and that led them to believe they could do shit like Solo and whatnot. So anyway, yeah, fuck it. Assassin's Creed. They thought it was going to be a big hit, and it wasn't. That brings us to, I guess, the closing thoughts here, in which we give our scores. I originally had this as an F, but due to this discussion and finding some of the positive merit, I'm upgrading it to a D. Yeah, so
not even a C.
Because
C's get degrees.
See, I am living proof of that, my friend. And so there was an intent here, and who knows, maybe one day I'll revisit it and come away with a newfound appreciation. But to our guests, in whatever order y'all want to go in, I do a letter rating, Julio does star ratings. You guys can give a color if you want, whatever you want to rate it, however you want to rate it. Just let us know where this lands for you.
I'm gonna do from 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. I'm gonna give it a 6.75.
Yeah,
excellent.
That's solid. I was expecting to be surprised, Techtic, because I couldn't really tell how much you had liked it or how much you had disliked it. You sound very passionate when you're talking about the things you liked and the things that you disliked. So I really couldn't pin it down. 6.75 is, I guess it makes sense.
It's a good movie. It's not top tier, but it's definitely nearing the positive.
All right, Nerdbomber, how about you?
So I usually have like a 5-star where like 5 is like, I can't stop thinking about this thing that I watched, read, played. 4 is like, it was really good. 3 is like, it was meh. 2 is like, this was not good and I feel like I wasted some time here. And 1 is like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. This is firmly a 2 for me. Like, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but I felt like I don't know. I didn't really like it. It made me mad for video game adaptations. I was confused. After this movie ended, I sat on the couch and I looked at Techtic and I was like, I have so many negative thoughts. I just need to get out of me. 2, solid 2.
I'm going with 2 stars. I do 1 to 5 stars. This is 2 stars. I appreciate some of the stuff that it's doing in the present. I don't think that it's very well shot, especially when it comes to the action, and that's a big problem. And I just wish it hit harder. I can look past the action scenes that don't do anything for me if everything came together in a way that really made me care. But it gets to the end and it really feels like it's just a warm up for the next movie, and that's really where it completely loses me. But I'll tell you, Alex, because I don't know if I texted you or I was talking to somebody about it, but I had to make the decision of if I was going to rent this or buy it, because I knew I was going to need to have the movie around for when I do the edit and I can pull clips and all that stuff. So sometimes if it's a movie that I know I'm going to like, or it's very likely I'm going to like, then I'll just go ahead and buy it. But I ended up going with rental. And as I was watching it last night, the first 30 minutes or so, I was like, man, I should have bought it because this is not bad. It would be nice to have it. It's a background movie. And then the closer it got to the end, by the time you hit the third act, I was like, no, this was the right call. This is a rental only. And if possible, rent it with a code, or wait until there's like some sort of deal where you can rent it for cheap, because it's not really worth the, $4.99 or whatever it is that I paid for it. So 2 stars for me, 2 stars from Nerdbomber, 6.75 from Techtic, and a D from Alex. Not a massive endorsement, but I think that if anything, we've been very articulate and we've elaborated on why we don't think it works. And
we're nothing if not thorough.
Yeah. But that was Assassin's Creed, a non-starter of a franchise, sadly. And you bet that if there's another Assassin's Creed movie, we're going to get together again and talk about it. Because at this point, we kind of have to. Alex, we're going to allow our listeners a peek behind the curtain. We are recording this way in advance. This, as we recorded this, I think we're like shoulder deep into our summer project. We have 2 more movies to go. 1 more Bogdanovich, 1 more PJ Hogan. So this episode's scheduled to come out middle of September.
Mhm.
It's a couple months from now. So before we throw it to ourselves in the future for the patron part of this, Online Warriors, I know you kind of go by current events and current headlines, but do you have an idea what's going to be going on your show in September?
In September, I mean, usually there's some video game releases that come out around that time, like the fall slate really starts hitting. There's always some, announcements, new movie trailers. Like we really get in the thick of movie trailer season, like when stuff starts coming out around the holidays. I feel like September is a big movie trailer discussion season for us. So hopefully we'll be covering all of that stuff. When is the Shrek movie coming out? That's not till next year. I keep getting excited. Shrek 5 was announced and I'm super stoked for it. And I keep hoping that it's coming out like this year and it's not.
That's an unexpected take. Techtic, are you also excited about Shrek 5?
I don't think that far ahead. I'm in September. I'm going to be probably on the Deadpool hype train.
Oh, yeah, me
I'll
too.
be on the heels of that.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So we're going to say goodbye to Techtic and Nerdbomber here in the present, and then we'll throw it to the future to see what's happening with us in September as far as the Patreon channel. But that's it. Nerdbomber, Techtic, thank you. Thank you for sharing your...
thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
sharing
this is
your
a blast.
knowledge, your charisma, and this won't be the last time we have you over. Next time maybe we'll do a good movie. Or a movie that's considered good. But yeah, thank you for being here, guys. We'll see you again soon.
I'm sorry if we've caused you any discomfort. Is there anything I can do?
How about you let me out of here?
Well, Alex, it's about 2 months later since we recorded with Nerdbomber and Techtic. And look, it's been so long that the episode, except for this little bit, is already edited. That's how much time has passed. And I can tell you, it's a good one. So all that's missing now is letting people know what's coming up next and what we're doing for the patrons. And first of all, what's coming up next that's also being recorded. Do you remember where it is?
This is after Pathan, right?
Yes. This is between Pathan and...
No. I'll know once you tell me because we've already recorded it, but I can't think of it in the...
The law.
Oh, the law. All right, Judge Dredd. Hell yeah.
Yes, Judge Dredd coming up next.
Something fun based on a previous IP. That I'm fired up for that.
Yes. So you have that to look forward to on the main feed. And then patrons, we have the bonus episode that is the perfect complement to Judge Dredd, the Stallone Judge Dredd, and that is the Stallone Demolition Man. I don't know if there's any other Demolition Mans, but we're having a bonus episode on that. The second team up of Sylvester Stallone and Rob Schneider. Who would have thought? Then for quick video reviews, I'm doing the movie I Saw the Devil and Alex is doing the movie Free Fire, both requested by patron Rob Stewart, Stu from Sewer Order. Mine sounds like a horror movie. Alex's is an action movie, I think. Not sure. I think that's the one with Brie Larson and disgraced actor Armie Hammer.
Action comedy. Also, Gerardo Copley's in it, so there you go.
Oh, yours sounds a lot more fun than mine, but we'll see. And then, Contrarians After Hours. Alex, do you know what we're doing for Contrarians After Hours?
A movie you suggested, Life of Crime. Is that the name of it?
Yes. Now, did you follow my instructions and not read anything about it?
I have not read anything about it, and as of the recording of this, I have not watched it yet, so I will continue having not read anything about it and going into it back row blind.
Yes, it's streaming on Peacock, so patrons, if you want to play along, just go in blind. There's a reason, and it will become apparent once you start watching it, and then we'll talk about it. And also, Alex, just because I just watched it a couple days ago, I went and saw Beetlejuice, the Beetlejuice sequel. Kind of a throwback to the Summer of Winona, and I need to talk to somebody about it, and you are it, my friend. So I don't foresee you going out to see Beetlejuice. I don't think you're even going to watch it when it gets to streaming, so I might as well.
You foresee correctly.
Well, I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years, so. So that's it for the After Hours. That's it for the quick video reviews. That's it for the bonus episode. That's it for the Patreon feed.
Doesn't that sound like a good time to check out? Regardless, this has been a hell of a time here with this Assassin's Creed episode, be it, like Julio said, over the course of like 75 days it's taken to record this, edit it, and put it all together. So it's been fun, but that's it. That's going to do it for Assassin's Creed. So Julio, this episode is over. I think it's time to get out of here. Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of 99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rodgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. You can also check out his podcast Nación Combi about Peruvian current affairs and Marginal about economy. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarians sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Corey Ari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
How much money he makes a year, or who he knows. Just promise me you'll wear that dress and you won't forget that some of it may